You are welcome in our webinar. Today, I'm pleased to welcome Xavier Claes. Xavier is an assistant professor at Sorbonne University and member of Jacques Williams Laboratory from 2020. He's also teacher at ISAE Supaéro and was a postdoctoral researcher at Polytechnic School of Zurich.
So presently I'm simply maître de conférence, associate professor in Sorbonne University.
Okay. And in 2008, Xavier defended the PhD thesis at INSTA on asymptotic and numerical of wave diffraction by thin wires. The research activity of Xavier is centered on modeling and numerical analysis of linear wave propagation phenomena in the context of frequency domain for electromagnetics and acoustics. And in particular, he is concerned with domain decomposition methods, boundary element methods, scientific computing, multi-scale problems, singular and elliptic problems. Thank you, Xavier, for accepting our invitation. You have 50 minutes to present your works, and 10 minutes or 15 minutes for questions.
Okay, sure. Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you. I would like first to warmly thank Nabil Gmati for his invitation to this seminar. This is joint work with Émile Parolin, that was formerly a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Pavia, and that is now a researcher in my lab, and also with Francis Colino, Pierre-Henri Tournier, and Roxane Achekzai, that I am currently supervising. So let me first describe the problem I will be interested in. Excuse me, I cannot see completely my slide. Yeah, okay. As a model problem, I am going to consider a very classical wave propagation problem in a harmonic regime, so a Helmholtz equation, frequency omega with some right-hand side f that will be square integrable, and an impedance condition on the external boundary of the computational domain. And I am interested in solving this problem by means of by means of domain decomposition techniques. So I need to introduce a partition of the domain into subdomains. So this will be partition without overlap. Each subdomain being denoted omega j and gamma j, referring to the boundary of each subdomain. So several remarks. First of all, this is really this is a very model problem, but most of what I am going to explain still applies in the case of heterogeneous coefficients, varying coefficients, and also applies to more general situation, Helmholtz equations, or more sophisticated boundary condition. And the second remark is that when conducting domain decomposition, you may consider consider a partition of the computational domain according to possible strategies. One possibility is to first partition the geometry of the computational domain and then generate a mesh in each subdomain. so that when refining the mesh, the subdomain partition does not change. And another possibility is to first generate a mesh over the whole computational domain and only after partition this mesh by means of, for example, a graph partitioner in an automatic manner. And when with the second strategy, this will lead to subdomains that may be much more irregular. And for example, on the picture that I show here, there are oscillations at the boundary of the subdomains because they have been generated by means of a graph partitioner. So the second, what I'm going to explain will apply. I will be particularly interested in the second strategy I have just mentioned. That is more general, and that is the most interesting one from applicative perspective. So in what the boundary value problem that I am considering can be decomposed according to the subdomain partition into into two collections of equations. There will be first a collection consisting of a wave equation posed in each subdomain separately, independently, and another collection of equations that will consist in transmission conditions that are posed on each interface. Dirichlet traces that match across each interface, and Neumann traces that match across each interface. So in the geometrical configuration that I want to consider, because I made very loose assumptions on the decomposition of the domain, this configuration may involve cross points, which are points where at least three subdomains are adjacent. And this is one of the striking features of what I am going to present, is that the strategy I want to present can cope with that kind of geometrical feature. So to be more precise, what I call cross points is sometimes referred to in the literature of domain decomposition as the wire basket. And this is defined in this way. So here I give three examples of cross points. For example, here, this is the example of a set of cross points, a wire basket in 3 dimensions. There may be also situations where there are cross points in waveguide like configurations, like in this situation here. And there are also situations where there are no cross point at all. So here, for example, I give a configuration, 2-dimensional configuration with no cross point. Okay, and there are many possibilities for dealing with wave equation in harmonic regime. There are many possible domain decomposition strategies. One of them has been studied by Nabil Gmati, by the way. But among all the possible strategies, I am going to focus on a particular one that was introduced by Bruno Desprez during his PhD thesis in the early 1990s. That is now referred to as a Desprez algorithm, and that is quite widespread. And I am going to first recall the general principle of this strategy. So there are 2 ingredients in this strategy. The first ingredient consists in rewriting the collection of transmission conditions in a particular manner. So these are the transmission conditions I wrote just in the slide before. And in the Desprez algorithm consists simply in rearranging these transmission conditions so as to express them by means of ingoing and outgoing Robin traces in this manner. And in fact, I can rewrite these condition in a vector manner. I can simply stack all the ingoing traces in one vector, stack all the outgoing traces in another vector, and express these transmission conditions by a linear relation associated with an operator. And this operator that expresses these linear relations, I am going to call it pi0. Pi0 is simply an operator that exchanges traces from each side of each interface. This is what I'm going to call a swapping operator. So this operator consists simply in swapping the traces from each side of each interface. It's local in nature. So that's the first ingredient of Desprez algorithm. The second ingredient consists in rewriting wave equation local to each subdomain by means of so-called scattering operators that take ingoing Robin traces as input, solve the Helmholtz equation, and return the corresponding outgoing Robin traces as input. And this has to be written in each subdomain independently. And all these equations can be again expressed in vector form, which involves a block diagonal operator that consists on each block in each local scattering operator. So here, the global scattering operator is simply a block diagonal operator. And then the idea is simply to plug one of these equations into the other. So here there is an additional offset term that comes into play that is simply related to the source term, but I do not want to further comment on this term because it's just a source term that is not very interesting from technical viewpoint. And so the idea here simply consists in plugging one set of equations into the other, which leads to an equation that writes in this way, in vector form. This is an equation that involves as unknown a tuple of ingoing Robin traces, tuple of traces on the boundary of each subdomain. And so this equation is posed on the union of all the boundaries of all the subdomains. So it's posed on the skeleton of the domain decomposition. So that's it. That's the equation associated to the Desprez algorithm. And this, yes?
Xavier, can you please repeat your explanation for the first operator? I think I missed something. If you can
sure.
describe it.
The
Okay.
pi0, you mean?
Yes.
Yes. So the pi0 is the following. So here I want to reformulate the transmission conditions across interfaces. So these write in this way, and I can rearrange them by a linear combination so as to express them by means of ingoing and outgoing Robin traces. Okay. And then the idea is to just write these relations in vector form, stacking all the ingoing Robin traces in one vector. I stack all the outgoing Robin traces in another vector, okay? And I simply re-express these relations, linear relations, by means of a linear operator, okay? And pi0 is nothing but the linear operator that expresses these linear relations, okay?
Okay.
And pi0 does nothing but swapping the traces from each side of each interface. So it's a local operator. That's why I call it the swapping operator. And this operator, this swapping operator, is very common in domain decomposition. It very often arises not only in the Desprez algorithm, but it comes into play in many classical domain decomposition substructuring strategies. So please do not hesitate to interrupt again if you have other questions. So here is the equation of the Desprez algorithm that is written on the skeleton of the decomposition, and it's very interesting for several reasons. The first one is that the global scattering operator S0, that is block diagonal, so it's parallel friendly. Okay, it's easy to distribute computations with the block diagonal operator. Pi0 is not parallel. Pi0 is what maintains coupling between subdomains, but it's local, it's sparse at the discrete level, and it's very explicit. So in fact, it's also easy to parallelize, okay? And last but not least, very interesting, is that these operators that come into play in this Desprez algorithm, so this equation is sometimes referred to as optimized FART formulation. These operators, they have remarkable properties. So the swapping operator, first of all, the swapping operator Pi0 is an isometry. In fact, it's an isometry with respect to the L2 norm at the continuous level. So it's an isometry, and as such, it's contractive. Okay. The scattering operator is also contractive. It satisfies this inequality, which expresses energy balance relation. Okay, and because Pi0 and S0 are both contractive, the formulation of the Desprez algorithm takes the form identity plus contractive operator, which is a positive operator in the L2 scalar product. Okay, so it's positive, and this is remarkable because at the beginning, I would like to remind you that I'm interested in Helmholtz equation, and Helmholtz equation is notoriously a sign indefinite, and this is a very annoying feature of the Helmholtz equation, that most of the classical variational formulation are sign indefinite. But here, with the Desprez algorithm, you end up with something that is not sign indefinite anymore. It's positive. And that's a striking feature of Desprez algorithm, and also of this is the same feature that is advantageous in the so-called ultra-weak variational formulation that were also introduced by Cessna and Desprez. So this operator that maps L2 to L2, you can prove that it is injective, it's positive, but at least at the continuous level, it's definitely not surjective, and so it's not coercive. It's not a coercive formulation. It becomes coercive at the discrete level. When you discretize this formulation, you get a coercive formulation, but the coercivity constant deteriorates as you refine the mesh. So because of this positivity, important positivity feature, when you apply, this is a very comfortable situation for solving the skeleton, the formulation attached to the Desprez algorithm. Very comfortable for solving with classical iterative solvers, such as, for example, Richardson algorithm. This is what I have written here. It converges for any value of the relaxation parameter that is smaller than 1, but the convergence rate deteriorates, and in the presence when the domain decomposition involves when the geometrical configuration involves cross points, the convergence of this algorithm of classical iterative solvers can be very slow. So here, in the case of the Richardson algorithm, it only converges algebraically. So during many years, since the introduction of the Desprez algorithm, there has been many contributions trying to accelerate, to modify the Desprez algorithm. There has been many contributions proposing variants of the Desprez algorithm so as to accelerate the convergence of the iterative solvers. And one strategy that has been investigated a lot consists in modifying the coefficient coming into play in the expression of the transmission condition by means of Robin traces. So this coefficient that is in red here, this is sometimes referred to as this impedance parameter. You may change this coefficient. You may take for this coefficient, you may take it operator valued, and in many contributions, try to choose to tune this coefficient, this operator, in a smart manner so as to accelerate the convergence of the iterative solvers. There has been tests. There has been there has been investigations, contribution where T is chosen as a surface differential operator, where T has been chosen as integral operator, where T tries to mimic a certain so-called Dirichlet-Tuneman map. In fact, there was a contribution by Colino, Ganemi, and Joly that established that geometric convergence, so exponential convergence here, exponential rate of convergence, can be obtained for the iterative strategy under certain conditions. And this corresponds to the case where you get both contractivity of the operator pi0, S0, and coercivity of the skeleton formulation. But this was possible in this article of Colino, Ganemi, and Joly under two conditions. The first condition was that there is no cross point. And the second condition is that the impedance operator has to induce a scalar product on the space of Dirichlet traces, the fractional Sobolev space H1 half on the interfaces, which is the natural functional framework for Dirichlet traces of the solution of the PD. And this hypothesis that there is no cross point is very annoying from a practical viewpoint, because this is a very strictly limiting the applicability of this result, unfortunately. So that's one remark. Another remark is that when there are cross points, because in practice for applications in engineering application, there are cross points in the domain decomposition, and inappropriate treatment of cross points may spoil convergence, may even prevent convergence. If you think about it at the discrete level, it's not clear what that means to swap unknowns when there are cross points, because when there are cross points, this means the cross points are points where at least 3 subdomains are adjacent. And this means that at cross points, applying the swapping operator at such points means swapping information between three unknowns, but it's not clear what swapping means when there are three unknowns. Okay, the meaning of swapping, of the swapping operator, how to discretize the swapping operator, it's ambiguous. There is something not clean. And this particular issue has been investigated a lot in recent years. So far, until the contribution I would like to present to you, there was this, in fact, this issue regarding crosspoint prevented from proposing a quantitative convergence theory for Desprez algorithm. In fact, until this contribution, I would like to explain, there was, even when there are no crosspoints, there was no theory in the literature that could provide an estimation for the convergence rate of the Desprez algorithm. Explicit estimate for the convergence rate. And there was no clear treatment for crosspoint. So the approach I would like to present consists mainly in replacing the swapping operator pi0 by another operator, much more sophisticated, that will be a non-local operator that I will denote pi. It's a non-local counterpart that is that comes from a formalism, a collection of works I did before that was dedicated to study of boundary integral formulations. And this is what was called the multitrace formalism, and that can cope in a clean manner at the continuous level with the presence of crosspoints. So now I am going to give more details on this strategy and more details about this non-local exchange operator. Okay, and so this introducing this non-local exchange operator corresponds to a new treatment, a new way to enforce transmission condition across interfaces. And to explain that, I need first to introduce notations. So I am going to give explanation directly at the discrete level. I am going to consider computational domain that is triangulated by means of a simplicial mesh. And I am going to assume that the partial differential equation, the boundary value problem, is discretized by means of Piquet Lagrange finite elements. Okay, so conforming Piquet Lagrange finite elements. So the computational domain is decomposed into non-overlapping subdomains, and attached to this decomposition, it is first natural to consider functions that are not globally Piquet Lagrange, globally H1, but simply a piecewise Piquet Lagrange, and such functions that are Piquet Lagrange finite elements functions in each subdomain may admit Dirichlet jump across each interface. So that is a natural space that I'm going to denote H double bar here. And then in this space of piecewise functions, I am going to consider the tuple of traces that are obtained from the functions in this space. So the tuples that are obtained by taking the interior traces of restriction to each subdomain. Okay, so these are a tuple of Dirichlet traces on the boundary of each subdomain. This is what I am going to call H double bar of sigma. Sigma is the skeleton of the decomposition. And this is what I am going to call the multi-trace space. And the dual to this space is the so-called Neumann multi-trace space, H double bar star. And then, so in the Dirichlet multi-trace space, the traces from each side of each interface have no reason to match. Okay, a priori they are decorrelated, but then it's natural to consider a subspace of tuple of traces that match across each interface. Okay, these are what I shall call Dirichlet single traces. And okay, and so in this functional setting, I am going to consider the trace operator that I'm going to call a B, that takes a tuple of function that takes a function that is piecewise pk Lagrange, and that maps it to the tuple of its traces on the boundary of each subdomain. So the functions that are globally pk Lagrange and that do not admit any jump will be denoted VH of omega. These can be considered as those are functions that are piecewise Lagrange in each subdomain with traces that match, okay, with Dirichlet traces that match, and this is expressed by simply enforcing that its traces are single traces. Okay, so those classical pk Lagrange, globally pk Lagrange functions are functions that are piecewise pk Lagrange with traces, tuple of traces that are single traces, which means that they match across each interface. Okay, this can be expressed in this manner by means of Lagrange parameters Q here that will be chosen in the set of the polar set of the single trace space, and this can be written rewritten in this manner, just taking the adjoint of the boundary trace operator. Okay, so that's the functional. That's the notations I need to introduce to explain this new way of enforcing transmission conditions. And I also need to introduce a notion of norm on the space of tuples of traces, on the multi-trace space. So in what follows, I need to introduce an operator T that takes a tuple of traces, a multi-trace, and maps it to its dual. Okay, this is in practice, this is a matrix. Okay, that the matrix of a binaire form on the tuple of traces, and this matrix, it can be anything. It can be chosen. You can choose it the way you want, but I only need to assume, the only assumption I need to make on this operator is that it's coercive. Okay. So typically, in domain decomposition, this operator T will be block diagonal. It will act on each trace locally. Okay. And it will play the role of the impedance coefficient. Okay. And in the results I am going to present, all the convergence estimates and so on will be expressed by means of the norm attached to the symmetric part of this operator. So TS here is the self-adjoint part. Operator is a scalar product because T is assumed to be coercive. So the operator T can be, for example, the finite element surface finite element matrix associated to a mass matrix, to a order 2 differential operator. It can be the matrix stemming from integral operator from Dirichlet-to-Neumann map. It can be the matrix associated to a Schur complement. It can be any of these choices. And I am going to the non-local exchange operator that I want to introduce is defined by means of this matrix T, this imbalance matrix, in the following way. Okay, so you take you define for any for any P that will be the input of the operator. You first solve a variational problem on the skeleton associated to the adjoint of T star. Okay, you get a solution U, and then the image of small p under the exchange operator is given by this formula here. T plus T star applied to U minus P. Okay, so this is an isometry. It turns out that this is an isometry with respect to the self-adjoint part of T. Okay, it's an isometry, and in fact, if T is chosen self-adjoint, P is a T is orthogonal, is an orthogonal symmetry, and it is even P square equals identity. Okay, so it has very strong it satisfies very strong algebraic properties. In addition, you may characterize you may characterize pairs of single of Dirichlet and Neumann single traces by means of this non-local exchange operator in this manner. Okay, and this characterization of Dirichlet and Neumann single traces very much looks like the equations that come into play into the Desprez algorithm for reformulating transmission conditions. Okay, on the left-hand side here, these traces on the left-hand side here very much look like ingoing Robin trace, and the traces on the right-hand side very much look like outgoing Robin traces. Okay, and this characterization should be seen as a non-local reformulation of transmission condition. So this I have introduced this non-local operator pi. Okay, it seems magical. It's a strange recipe here. You may think what it seems to be completely different from the swapping operator, the pi 0. So is there any relationship? In fact, if you consider a domain decomposition where there is no cross point, and if you assume that the impedance coefficient, the T, matches from it is the same from each side of each interface, then this non-local exchange operator exactly coincides with the swapping operator. So that this non-local exchange operator I have presented to you, I have just introduced, is simply a generalization of the swapping operator. It coincides with the swapping operator when there are no cross points, and when there are cross points, it still can it still holds. It still provides a recipe for formulating transmission conditions. So it's a generalization of the swapping operator that also provides formulation of transmission condition even when there are cross points. And I should say, by the way, that when there are no cross points and that the impedance operator T is a mass matrix, then the DDM strategy I am going to show simply coincide with the Desprez algorithm. So what I am presenting to you is a generalization of the Desprez algorithm. And not only am I going to generalize the Desprez algorithm, but I also claim that I can give a full theory with convergence rate estimate. Okay. So one remark in passing is that those two hypotheses here that assume that the impedance operator from each side of each interface coincide. This can be expressed by means of a commuting identity, and this commuting identity was in fact introduced in a paper by Colino, Joly, and Lecouvé in 2020 in configuration without crosspoint, though. Okay. I am going to skip that. And now, now that I have introduced this non-local exchange operator, let me show you how I use that and to obtain domain decomposition formulation, domain decomposition strategy. So I first start from the classical discrete finite element formulation of the Helmholtz equation with no decomposition into subdomain. Okay, so this is a completely classical finite element discrete formulation with this BNR form here, this right hand side, and then what I'm going to do. So here I'm going to skip the different steps. It's a bit technical. I do not want to take too much time on that. I will simply relax the Dirichlet transmission condition across interfaces by means of the Lagrange multiplier. And then I rearrange the equations. I skip the details here. And I end up, and then rearranging the equation. Next, I eliminate the unknowns that are interior to each subdomain so as to end up with a formulation posed only on the skeleton of the formulation. And this formulation takes the form identity minus pi s here, where S is defined in this manner. S is a block diagonal operator that is nothing but the discrete counterpart of the scattering operator I introduced at the beginning of my talk. So it's block diagonal, which means it's parallel friendly. And in addition, this scattering operator, block diagonal scattering operator, is contractive. So here, this means that my formulation takes the form identity plus pi s, and pi is an isometry by construction, and the scattering operator s is contractive. So I get a formulation attached to an operator identity plus contraction, which has the same interesting features as the original Desprez algorithm. But that's not the end of the story, because this operator, it's bounded. The identity plus contraction, it's obviously in the operator norm, it's bounded by 2. And in addition, with this definition of the exchange operator, the non-local exchange operator, I can prove that this formulation is coercive, strongly coercive, with a coercivity constant that I can estimate. So here is the estimation attached to this coercivity constant. So gamma h is can be taken of this form. So here there is first a term that quantifies how much T is non-self-adjoint. It quantifies the non-self-adjointness of T. So in the case where T self-adjoint, which is which covers many most of the interesting situations in practice. So when T self-adjoint, this term here in magenta is simply equals 1. Okay. Next, there are term alpha here. That so first there is the continuity modulus of the binaire form of the initial discrete formulation. With appropriate conventions, it could be equal to 1. And then there is alpha, that is the discrete unsub constant of the initial finite element formulation. Okay, discrete unsub constant. And finally, there are those two constants, lambda minus and lambda plus, which are the two extremal eigenvalues of the impedance operator with respect to a reference impedance lambda. Okay. And with this estimate, I obtain a convergence, an explicit convergence rate for the Richardson iterative solver. And that takes this form. Okay, and one of the interesting consequences of this estimate is that the iterative solver is H uniformly converge. The convergence is geometric and uniform with respect to the mesh width, provided that the impedance is spectrally equivalent and H uniformly spectrally equivalent to the reference impedance capital lambda. In fact, this and lambda is, what is this reference impedance lambda? Capital lambda is nothing but the a norm associated to the that corresponds to the H1 half norm, the Dirichlet traces. Okay, and in fact, this choice of impedance, t equals lambda, this is a definitely viable choice of impedance, and this leads to this estimate for the coercivity constant. Okay, so just want to mention that this theory and this theoretical framework I just described only relies on few hypotheses. There is one hypothesis on the sign of the imaginary part of the initial binaire form. There is a unique solvability hypothesis for the it should satisfy a discrete condition, and one hypothesis on the impedance operator, and that this impedance operator has to be coercive. There is no assumption on the shape constant of the mesh, no assumption on the shape constant of the mesh, no assumption on the frequency regime. And one side remark is that the impedance is maybe non-local a priori, but you may also choose it to be local. Okay, so now that's the last part of my presentation, but how much time is there remaining?
How much time you need?
Maybe 5 minutes.
It's okay. It's okay.
Okay, great. So now the last part of my talk will simply show you numerical results that confirm all the conclusions, all the results I have presented to you. So I am going to show results in 2D on a disk that is partitioned, but I also have results in 3D on a ball. We did experiments for Helmholtz equation in 2D, in 3D for Maxwell's equations also. In what I am going to, so I'm going to consider Helmholtz equation with impedance condition at the external boundary of the computational domain, with a source term that is attached to the boundary condition that stems from a plane wave, and the relative error. I am going to, so in this problem, I chose this problem because I know the exact solution. Okay, and the relative error is given in this way. So it's H1, it's expressed with respect to piecewise H1 norm. For the linear solver of the global DDM, I'm going to consider the GMRS with stopping criterion corresponding to relative tolerance of 10 to the minus 8. These are only sequential computations. All the computation rely on homemade finite element code. This was coded by Émile Parolin in Julia, except for the integral operator that come from a library I wrote in C++ that is called BEMTool. And the exchange operator, the action of the exchange operator relies on, because this exchange operator, computing the action of this exchange operator assumes solving this problem on the skeleton. Okay, this is where the non-locality of the exchange operator comes from. And this problem on the skeleton that is coercive was solved by means of a PCG as a precondition conjugate gradient at each iteration. Okay, I can comment much more on that later if you want. So here are 4 different choices of impedance operator that we considered that correspond to impedance operator that is block diagonal each time. So first choice, T is a block diagonal surface mass matrix on the boundary of each subdomain. Second choice, T is block diagonal surface H1 scalar product on the boundary of each subdomain. Third choice, T is corresponds to hypersingular integral operator on the boundary of each subdomain. And last choice is the reference impedance that corresponds to a sure complement of a strongly coercive problem that can be also understood as a discrete Dirichlet-Tuneman discrete counterpart of the Dirichlet-Tuneman map of this strongly coercive problem. Regarding partitioning, I consider partitioning from 2 subdomains, 4 subdomains up to 128 subdomains, and no, this partitioning is obtained by means in automatic manner by means of METIS. So automatically, you can see that the geometry of the cross points is completely arbitrary. So this approach is really robust to the presence of cross points. So here there is first a collection of results showing for each of these choices the convergence of the iterative solver. So here I should mention that the Desprez algorithm corresponds to the choice where T equals M, the mass matrices. Okay, so here in black is the Desprez algorithm. Okay, so you see that here when choosing impedance that equals W or lambda converges much faster. Okay, the same conclusion for 4 subdomains or 128 subdomains, no matter the presence of cross points. Here is another set of results where the mesh is refined. N lambda indicates the number of points per wavelength. And what you see is that when the impedance equals the hypersingular operator, integral operator, or reference impedance, then the iteration count is completely stable, which is not the case for the Desprez algorithm, as expected.
Xavier,
Yes.
the last slide was the results for Richardson algorithm, or
No, it's
also for
GMRS.
GMRS.
Yes. Yes, GMRS, yes. Yes. Here is GMRS also. Yeah, we also did tests with Richardson, but yeah. Next, this is the iteration count when the number of subdomain grows. So you see that the iteration count deteriorates in all cases, but the deterioration is mild in the case where T is an integral operator. Okay, but that's scalability for wave equation is still a challenge, no matter the approach, the strategy that you consider. Next, iteration count with respect to frequency, and here you see that when the impedance operator equals W or capital lambda, then the strategy is quite robust to the rise, the frequency to higher frequency raise. This is a very big test case with I think 213 million unknowns that was achieved in parallel with these results were conducted by Pierre-Henri Tournier at Jacques Louis Laboratory with software with FreeFEM that is using BEM tool and hierarchical matrix library H tool. And you see that the iteration count is quite stable with respect to the number of subdomains. So here is a picture of what you obtain for the simulation in this Marmouzy test case, so that you see that the wavelength is really small. And these are last slide on Maxwell's equation that go in the same direction regarding the numerical conclusion regarding the conclusion. So this is the end of my talk. I would like to finish by mentioning that we'll propose the new way of imposing transmission conditions involving another choice of exchange operator. For proper choices of impedance, this yields H uniform convergence of iterative solvers and is robust to the presence of cross points. In addition, this approach appears as a natural generalization of the Desprez algorithm. But in addition, it also provides a full theoretical framework, and it also gives new results on the Desprez algorithm itself. So we obtain new results that were not known on the Desprez algorithm. Also available, but I did not talk about that here, the continuous theory. There is a full continuous theory that yields a strongly coercive formulation of the Helmholtz equation. I did not talk about other boundary conditions, but other boundary conditions can be considered. Also, eigenvalue problem can be considered. I did not talk about non-unsubstable impedances. I did not give detail, but here theory can also be given. And I did not talk about so that much about Maxwell, the case of Maxwell equations and strongly elliptic problems, but there are also interesting things to, interesting conclusion to draw from all this framework. There are many perspectives. I list some of them here. So thank you for your attention. This is a list of references. Some of them have been published since then.
Thank you, Xavier. Thank you for this beautiful talk. Is there some questions? No questions? Okay. I have a question about when you presented the results of the estimation of the rate of convergence.
Yes, the convergence rate, yeah, estimate.
Yes, the convergence rate.
Yes.
This is the convergence rate for Richardson algorithm, I think.
Okay, so here I must. Okay, so this estimate is an estimate on the coercivity constant of the formulation.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you have a formulation, when you have an operator that is coercive, an estimate on the coercivity constant directly, in general, leads to convergence estimate for all classical iterative solvers. So it yields convergence estimate for GMRS, for Richardson, for many iterative solvers, as you probably know. And so this is why I claim that this not only gives a convergence estimate for Richardson, you're right, but also for GMRS.
Okay, but even for this, for your algorithm, for Richardson, it's a geometric convergence, and for GMRS, it's superlinear. But it's this constant. It changed the rate of the two algorithms. It's exactly what you said.
It quantifies this constant here, gives an estimate. If you estimate this constant, this is the when you have.
Can you put the slide? Can you put the slide with the convergence result? Yeah.
It's here.
This one. Okay.
So for example, here, if you have an estimate on gamma h, this automatically gives an estimate on the rate of convergence of Richardson. But
Okay.
you have also this kind of estimate for GMRS.
But I thought, remember that GMRS is faster than Richardson because it's not just geometrical convergence, it's superlinear. It's more than you can correct me,
Yes.
perhaps I missed something, but it's
No. I think you're definitely right, and the reason for that is that GMRS is Krylov
exactly.
solver.
Yeah.
But the thing is that theoretical prediction on the convergence rate estimate is one thing, actual convergence is another one. You agree with that?
You mean at the numeric?
If you have an estimate on the convergence of the solver may converge faster than your prediction. Okay. So what I claim is that an estimate on this constant will lead to an estimate on the convergence of GMRS that is geometric, but that is probably pessimistic. Mm-hmm. So, but your remark about superlinear convergence maybe is related to your other remark about this graph, right? Yes. Because here these are lines. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yes. Okay. So I forgot to mention something. Okay. When I say GMRS is restarted GMRS. So here I'm using restarted GMRS. I think that the restart is set to maybe 20 or 40. Mm-hmm. And in this case, it's not superlinear. Restarted GMRS.
Okay, I'm not sure, but okay, thank you. Thank you, Xavier. Is there other questions? Okay, thank you for the attendance, even if I share the date of the conference very late this week. Thank you, everybody, to be here with us. Thank you, Xavier, again for this beautiful talk. And see you next time, I hope.
Yes. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Merci.